So I was talking about the tea time and the discussions normally we have during the tea time. Be it at home, be in office or with friends, there's a common topic about the social system. And we take a lot of interest until the last sip. And as soon as the sip is over, the tea is over, we go back to our work and then forget the whole world. But we have people who are working round the clock to help us not just progress, but then, see the development areas. Especially during last few months and days, we have seen a lot of disruptions. We've seen a lot of ambiguities. We sit at home, crib about things. We are not going out and then, etc. But these experts not just have the aerial view, but they have the grassroots understanding of the system. And that is why they're here. I introduce my guests. The first guest is.
My name is Edison Samraj. I head the Health Ministry's department in Southern Asia Division, Bangalore. I take care of India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Maldives. And it's my privilege to participate in this group discussion and have distinguished panelists like Dr. Ganeshan, Sister Shweta, and Ashish Kumar from London. I'll begin with the youngest one here and ask the first question to Ashish Kumar. How has Shell Foundation and its portfolio enterprise been responding to COVID-19 response and the new normal?
Great, thank you, Dr. Samraj, and thank you, Shruti. Maybe I can just say a couple of words as an introduction, what I do and what our organization does before I jump into the question. So I am the innovation lead at this, foundation, Shell Foundation, which is like a UK registered charity. We act like a venture philanthropy setup in the impact investing area. We support over 65 enterprises in India, in Africa, which are early stage. We provide them catalytic funding to help them get to a stage where they can attract more commercial capital, which is more like a market-based solution to impact rather than the conventional charity or NGOs model that has been existing for very long. We focus on a few sectors, I would say. We focus a lot on renewable energy or energy access, which in SDG context is SDG 7, energy access for all. We focus a bit on agriculture, ag tech, think about solar water pumps. We focus on sustainable mobility, to think about electric vehicles in India or e-rickshaws, or in the how to enable less carbon intensive solutions. Then we also focus on cross-cutting areas like gender inclusion, climate change, MSME growth. In terms of like our work in India, we have a portfolio of around 15 to 20 enterprises in these focus sectors. I think responding to your question, I think broadly, I should say, as a part of COVID response, we have mobilized almost 10 to 15 million dollars, which in the last few months, and we will be doing to help our enterprises in which are affected directly, as well as we have helped fund one of the specialized facilities which have been launched in the energy access world called COVID Access Relief. And we use different instruments to support them, be it sort of grant or sort of guarantees and interest-free loan or debt. So it's a few different levels of intervention. That's at the organization level. Our portfolio enterprises in India, they have there are some in agriculture, like there's one in Maharashtra called F4S Technologies in Aurangabad region. What they do is they have these solar dehydrators and help farmers with the market linkage in the end-to-end solution. Specifically, what they have done for COVID response is move from a B2B model to B2C, directly reaching out to customers. They are doing some product R&D to find more nutritional value products, which let's say dehydrated food, which can enable food security for the vulnerable population. Then we have some mobility enterprises in South India. One is called Tusker. They provide demand aggregation or help sort of connect logistics need for remote areas. You can say last mile distribution. They use advanced machine learning platform for that. As a part of COVID response, they have come up with support for all these informal transporters that you may know that exist. Like informal sector almost accounts for 80% in India's labor force, and they have specially mobilized support for around 1,500 families which are affected with these. Due to lockdown, these transporters kind of lost their job immediately. So I just gave some snippets of examples of how some of our portfolio companies are responding and how we as a foundation are responding. I'll stop there and I'll go into detail on other aspects later.
Thank you very much, Ashish, for that broad overview of what you're doing there as part of Shell Foundation. I would like to ask Dr. Ganeshan, what's your journey been like in this creating new ecosystems?
Well, let me just answer, telling you a little bit about what we do. See, Pune City Connect was actually started almost 5 years ago. And the basic premise at that point of time, and we do primarily digital literacy, skills, transforming education in some municipal schools. And as many of you would remember, one of the biggest problems we've had is providing skilling in a manner where there is adequate placement. I mean, in this country, we have skilled with CSR funds, government funds, but the net result has been hardly 12% have found jobs. And even from those who found jobs, 50% drop out and go back to either rural India or the slums. We've seen some of that happening in the last few months. So what we did in Pune City Connect was, we said we have to work with government. So when we talk about ecosystems for social, it's almost fashionable to say we will do everything and we don't want to work with government. But to my mind, it never works that way. And what we said was, in fact, we had a very visionary commissioner 5 years ago, whom I think Shweta knows very well, called Kunal Kumar.
Excuse me to interrupt.
Yeah.
Excuse me to interrupt. Dr. Edison, please mute. Please mute. We are hearing. Dr. Edison, kindly.
Yeah, that's fine. So then what happened was we came up with this model, which I think makes for very, very good partnerships, where we said that, look, we are not going to take money from the government, nor will we give any money to the government. It will be a partnership in the true sense. So the model of Pune City Connect is very simple. The government provides all the capexes. So we have 6 buses, we have 27 locations, which are physical buildings, which have been allocated to either digital literacy training or full-fledged skills development. We partner with close to 20 organizations which are providing the funding for the OPEX. The CAPEX is provided by the government. And all the skill development, paying the skills partners, doing a majority of the skills ourselves, having a fairly large placement team which works with the corporate sector is all done by Pune City Connect. The advantage there has been that we've had a very, very harmonious partnership for 5 years, coming up to a renewal for another 5 years. And what it does is, it has currently, if you look at it, we have now impacted almost 52,000 people. We have a target of 2 lakh people from the slums of Pune. I mean, there are close to 650 slums, and we're kind of addressing the requirement of every family in those slums and saying that, look, we will make the 2 lakh happen by finding at least one child in every family which can be helped through education or provided digital literacy and digital autonomy, and going all the way to ensuring that people get jobs. So the job placement rates have been 60-65% as compared to the standard 12%. We still target to make it 80%. And I'll just stop by saying there is a huge amount of work to be done, ladies and gentlemen, in this country. And each one of us, and we heard Ashish talking about multiple worthwhile entities that he is working with, but the opportunity is tremendous. In fact, the other institution I chair is something called Social Venture Partners, where we're working with 43 NGOs, including some very big ones like Seva and Mandeshi, some small ones like Pan IIT, Reach for India. And across these, we've actually managed to create 243,000 jobs. The goal there is 1 million jobs. So if each one of us does our bit, make sure that we partner with CSR, partner with foundations like Shell Foundation, partner with the government where it required to be done, I think we can make a much more progressive and supportive social ecosystem happen. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, for that fabulous story. of how Pune City Connect has made a tremendous impact in the social scene in the field of education. Shweta ma'am, can you please tell us your story or what it meant to you to handle this great challenge of meeting this COVID challenge of disruption?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Edison. One of the first things that I would want to add here, and this is to you, Dr. Edison, is the youngest on the panel is definitely not Ashish, it's me. So next time you say that, please don't forget me. Meanwhile, just to add, I've been on different sides of this table. So the last government, I was lucky to be advising the Chief Minister's office. And that's where we came up with this concept called Maharashtra Village Transformation Foundation. Now, when we are talking about a social ecosystem, I think we heard Ganesh ji talk and we heard what Ashish was saying. See, in this entire ecosystem, there are various stakeholders. Now, I think 70-year-long process of building up this country, we have heard this statement of Chalo Gaon ki or so many times, and changing the village and changing the people to such a large extent that when I started my journey of this entire social ecosystem, I started to think about the fact that what is it that I will add extra to what has not been tried earlier. And one of the things that I came across is a terminology called convergence. Now, what exactly is convergence? This is exactly what I'm going to be talking about. Now, please understand, for any transformational change to happen, let's take, for example, a village, any transformational change to happen, who are the stakeholders? One, as Ashish sits here, we have corporates who are large stakeholders because they come with skill sets, they come with knowledge. Then we have foundations, as in Ganesh ji, he comes with so many different foundations. So you have the not-for-profit, the NGOs who come across to change this entire ecosystem. Third, and most important that we always forget, is the community at large. Now, this community consists of the people who have to transform. You'll be surprised, but I can give you data to support the fact that things that we have not tried to transform, for example, mobility, or for example, wireless, or say TV revolution or smartphone revolution in the villages. Now, you did not have to push these ideas to the villages, but it happened. Today, we have nearly 65% of the villagers who have motorbikes and motorcycles. You have 78% of penetration of smartphone and feature phones in the villages. But at a certain level, you just had 18% individual households with toilets. So that got me thinking that community at large, the idea of transformation starts with them. The most important thing that we need to understand, and I think Ganesh ji just said it, government is a very critical stakeholder, because it is very, very important for you to understand that the government also sometimes works in silos between different ministries and different departments. And there is absolutely no communication and tandem between all of them. And last but not the least are the professionals. So we have the lawyers community, we have the doctors community, we have the teachers community. Now, these are the people who want to give back, but they don't have a platform where we can actually utilize their skill set. But these are the skill sets which are absolutely required for any transformational change, or you pick up any SDG goals. So what I primarily did in Maharashtra Village Social Transformation Foundation, under the leadership of the Honorable Chief Minister, we adopted 1,000 villages. And we took sustainable development goals indicated by the United Nations, map it to every government scheme, and converge the efforts of all these stakeholders in these 1,000 geographical areas and see maximum benefits in these areas. And if we are able to transform the ecosystem here, then we can replicate this model elsewhere. And I must tell you that out of these 1,000, at least 600 of them I've personally visited only in Maharashtra. These villages are spread across in Maharashtra. And I personally feel that we've created tremendous records in this. one of the most important things here is the mindset change, behavioral change, because that takes a lot of time. So we can do everything else except the behavioral change, which obviously is a long-term vision. So just to sum up, I would rather say that most important thing in this social ecosystem is convergence of effort of different stakeholders, and that is what is going to bring transformational change. You're still muted, Dr. Edison.
I want to thank you, Shweta, for that beautiful explanation of your success story and looking at all the aspects together, making your success work. I, of course, had a question to ask you that you said that mindset change is critical and you have worked hard on it. I will come back to you in the end. How did you affect that mindset change in Maharashtra? I will come back to it. But for now, I want to ask a question to Ashish. Ashish, you have been in the UK and you've been working in projects in India. What new trends and themes and opportunities you see in the impact of investment for social ecosystems?
Thanks, Dr. Samraj. I think what I'd like to do is to sort of segue and add to what Shweta had just said and sort of build on that point. And that leads to also addresses the question you just asked. One of the big trends we are observing everywhere, like, be it in like, emerging markets in or fragile markets in Africa or, parts of Southeast Asia, or even in the developed market context, is the move from global to local supply chains or regional supply chains. And that is pretty much in a way linked to the sort of self-sufficiency or self-resiliency of the like villages and communities, in parts of India and Africa. By global to local, what I mean is there has been a lot of dependency on sort of outsourced, manufacturing, outsourced services. If you look at some of the numbers in India context, like just in renewable energy sector, 80% of the solar and PVs are imported from China. If you look at the pharma sector, around 70% of the ingredients, API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, are again imported from China. There has been a lot of dependency. The government has come up with some kind of, I think, export limits as well on a number of these, products after the COVID crisis happened. There is a need for building the local capacity and local sort of manufacturing capabilities and the supply chain around that. So around like there are a number of ways that it can be addressed. Talking more from a solution angle, you can look at how sort of automation and sort of batch production and decentralized manufacturing is taking over in some of the markets. There's AI and machine learning and IoT that has a part to play in that. There's advanced network infrastructure which can play a part in that. But the central point is like moving from more like global to local, supply chains and resiliency that can be built around that. I think the second trend is more on specific sectors like agriculture, ed tech. Some of the ed tech and digital sectors, if you look at in the COVID times, they have actually been doing well. Everyone would be agreed to how e-commerce has been critical in these times. And there are some specific examples like Gramophone in India, I know, which provides personalized crop care through advanced, again, digital solutions. So, and similarly, like in health and medtech, there's like companies like Address Health or Concert Medical, which I'm familiar in India, which provide like pediatric care for each and every child through the school networks. What I'm observing is a sort of more proliferation of these services and support, also from like an impact investor consortium. I would say some of these sectors will rise further, which is again, I always try to look at the positives and the solution-oriented mindset. There's a lot of challenges which you're facing, and these are some of the emerging opportunities. And the last trend I would highlight is the digitalization, not just at the supply chain level that I already covered, but also within the enterprise level. By that, I especially mean how these specific social sector enterprises or startups are already had need to move more digital in the way they operate and reduce their cost base. Uh, COVID had just aided that, or accelerated that process. So and that will continue uh, in the long term in the new normal. There are
Thank
other
you,
trends
Ashish.
I can go on, but I'll stop at the moment to let other people
Thank you,
respond.
Ashish, for that review of the trends. And Dr. Ganesh, you want to respond to that statements that Ashish has made regarding the trends?
No, I think trends, one of the trends I'd like to pick up on is it's actually quite an interesting use of technology, because maybe thanks to COVID, and even I was actually quite surprised to find that even the poorest of the municipal schools in Pune, for instance, is actually able to teach its students using technology. One of the entities we support in Jharkhand, entity called PARFI, Pan IIT Reach for India, they have these multiple nursing kaushal centers across Jharkhand, which is actually a joint venture with the government. And it's absolutely amazing, because I actually went and spoke in one of the centers not far from Ranchi, about 40 kilometers from Ranchi. And you have people from 17 different tribes in one locality, and they're all communicating. I mean, today they've really embraced technology. So my own suggestion would be, in fact, I'm part of a government committee called the $1 Trillion Digital India. And you'll be amazed, Dr. Samraj, while we are all doubtful about the $5 trillion India GDP happening in the foreseeable future, thanks to all these problems, but we are all very convinced that the digital India can happen. Because if the national optical fiber network is laid across all the 250,000 gram panchayats in this country, and I think, again, what Shweta was talking about in terms of rural transformation, very, very feasible. And of course, we have to have the 100 Mbps available in every one of the 600,000 villages. But if that happens, the ingenuity of Indians is so high that I'm finding that they adapt to technology like a fish in water. And I think that's one trend I'm really seeing. And one of the things we want to do in the next 2 years is to take the $1 trillion Digital India opportunity and make it work for the 1.4 billion people. So that is when the Indian transformation will be complete. So I am passionate about the opportunities in integrating the best of technology with the poorest of people. And I think it's required in this country to make substantial social change happen.
I think the transformation can be, Dr. Ganeshan, as you said rightly, using and maximizing this $1 trillion digitalization of India to its maximum extent, that India will be transformed and changed completely. Now, coming back to Shweta's interesting point that she made on the mindset change, I want to share a thought with you, Shweta ma'am and Dr. Ganeshan and Ashish. I started an experiment also with 600 schools in India, changing the mindset of youngsters on healthcare. And we gave them topics to discuss and debate and to bring about social transformation in their minds. And since Shweta ma'am has mentioned this very clearly in her rural transformation experiment, it was so amazing to see almost 200,000 students participated in this. And over a period of 1 year, we had the conclusion of that mindset change process culminate in Bangalore, where about 2,000 young people had come on things like social media and its impact on human mind, global warming and its impact on human disease, and gaming and its impact on human mind, and nutritional requirements for the human body. These were simple things that needed attention, and there was a debate and discussion by the youngsters to bring about a mindset change. So I asked a question to Shweta ma'am, how did you bring about mindset change in Maharashtra, since your focus was that, as part of your transformation imperative?
Perfect. I think the biggest problem with change is that we always tend to feel as humans that we love change, we want change, but change is something that someone else will bring it for us. Now, and that is the biggest problem. So one of the first things that I was myself extremely surprised with when I started off on this mission was for 1,000 villages, I actually wanted to have change makers that would go from outside of the village and be there and become the catalyst of change. And in my mind, I thought if I would have young people, they would, one, be very, very important with well versed with technology, and second, these are the people who are going to bring the dynamism in the system, especially in the political system, in a bureaucratic system, and so on and so forth. So I invited applications. So we invited applications of these change makers who were aged between 20 to 28. We were to the initial application, we were just wanting to fill about 300 odd people. 4,500 young students and people who were working in different larger corporates applied, saying that we will take sabbatical, go to these villages and work as catalyst. So one, I just to answer your question, I think if you give them a platform, it is very important. People will change, but any change can become a transformation and a permanent transformation if it is backed by measurability. So one of the first things that we did, and I completely agree to what Ashish ji and Ganesh ji has been saying, I think social ecosystem and transformation, the nervous system is going to be technology. And it is going to be technology which is going to drive right from the mindset to almost every sort of change. So I will drive in two examples. We gave a small tablet and a small interface for them to actually go and do their own research, because we did not want to rely on census data and the government data which were available to us. So one, when these boys and girls actually went to the villages, they dug out data, and this data were part of their own research. Now, one, we actually captured the data before these change makers went there. And while these change makers were going, we actually got this entire thing together and presented it as a dashboard in front of the chief minister. So every time that it was measured and an appreciation went out for a particular village, and we've seen in Maharashtra, we've seen this happening with Pani Foundation, we've seen this happening with any kind of Jan Sahbag, when people's movement, this is precisely what motivated people. So I think measurability using technology is something which drives change. I will also add in a small example here. We were really, in certain areas, we were struggling with ODF. So open defecation is a relevant topic even now in villages, and we were struggling with ODF. So because we had ODF goals, we decided that in certain areas we will have CCTV cameras deployed even in villages. And this CCTV camera was actually used again as a small dashboard in the panchayat system to show that for naming and shaming. Now, the villagers, as soon as they realized that technology is being used and they will be named and shamed, we could achieve ODF in the next couple of months in those villages. So I personally feel that yes, Danda works. I'm a typical Indian mom, so I love my kids, but I also, give them big Danda. So carrot and stick, but more importantly, measurability is something which is going to really drive the behavioral change.
Thank you for that wonderful story of how you brought about mindset change in rural Maharashtra, especially on that issue that you just brought out. I want to come back to the focus that Ashish had brought up in the beginning itself, on different focus that you gave, Ashish, on renewable energy and sustainable mobility and gender inclusion and climate change. You did mention those 4 points. Can you take one of that and give a little bit of a case in point and your intervention in India, so that we can better acquaint ourselves as to what you're exactly doing in India? You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. So Yeah, I'll pick up renewable energy. So the specific goal that we exist to serve is the SDG 7, which stands for energy access. As you know, almost 840 million or almost a billion people in the world still don't have proper access to grid electricity, or a lot of almost 2 billion have unreliable access. So a lot of interventions or solutions that exist to address that are things like solar mini grids, which you may have seen in like, or solar farms in remote areas, or you may have seen solar home systems or solar lamps, like smaller products. That is one area. uh, the other subsector is things around we call productive use of energy. By that we mean any use of energy that can lead to income increase of the customer or the beneficiary. Think about solar water pumps, or think about how that can increase the yield, or for any small farmer. We're not talking about commercial farmers. um, Similarly, there's been a lot of government schemes around solar water pumps, which many of you would be familiar with. The other case in point is the post harvest loss that happens for the crops in agriculture sector. Almost 25 to 30% of the post harvest produce is lost because there's not enough cold chain, affordable cold chain, like which can increase the shelf life of these produce, and so that the farmers can take it to mandi in time, or preserve it till they get the better price. So we have some enterprises which are providing these kind of solutions. Both on We had like one alumni enterprise called Husk Power Systems, which you may be familiar with. They had a hybrid biogasification to turn husk into electricity, and combined with solar. They were operating in UP and Bihar, and now they're expanding to Tanzania. We had supported them for almost 10 years. And then we have entities like S4S, which I mentioned, which does solar dehydrators to increase the preserve the nutrients and provide the farmers, especially women farmers. Or There's work with around 2,000 women farmers in Maharashtra, and they're expanding to other regions as well. Uh, so a lot of these enterprises, they have been repurposing, as I mentioned, for the making sure their own staff first gets support. So we are providing them, business resilience funding, we call it. Then we are also making sure they come up with new models to adapt to the new COVID world, which is like things like moving from B2B to B2C. Uh, and some of these interventions, they have we are constantly looking for newer types of models or newer innovations, because we come in an early stage. So we are supporting a new program which is launched by CEEW, Council of Energy, Environment and Water, Delhi-based think tank, and Will Grow, which is like India's one of the biggest social enterprise incubator. So they've come up with this new program to or called Powering Livelihoods, which is again all about using energy to increase the productivity or productive use, and help the customers or end beneficiaries get more income or income generating. It's not just about providing lighting solutions. It's about helping them to cut through the vicious cycle of poverty. So they are looking at some of the technology innovations, think about the rice mills, or hulling machines, which help in sort of increasing the productivity for farmers. Or think about multi-purpose agro processing appliances, which can be solar powered in places where there's no reliable electricity at affordable rate. And so this whole sector, in a way, it's called DRA, distributed renewable energy, energy. And this whole sector has been at a very nascent stage in India and in Africa as well. Our push from foundation side is to create an ecosystem which leads to the growth of the entire DRE sector and helps all these enterprises get to a scale where they become commercially relevant, help attract more financing from both lenders, banks, and also create enough data for policy level change. So one policy level change, as you know, is the priority sector lending in India, PSL. Can there be PSL kind of opportunities for this DRE sector, which is helping both the move to cleaner energy as well as the letting the increase of income for a lot of these enterprises? I hope that sort of gives you some idea, the audience some idea that how we are working in these niches, but like trying to drive the change with multiple SDG lenses.
Thank you, Ashish, for that wonderful story and point. I've come back to Dr. Ganesh. I was quite fascinated by the story of Pune Connect and the work that you're doing there in Pune. Can you tell us an inspiring story for this Pune Connect? One story that would inspire all of us. Unmute yourself, please. Unmute. Okay. Unmute.
You're still on mute.
So you are still.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yes. Please tell us a story that will inspire us.
Dr. Edison, please mute Dr. Edison.
Yep. So I won't even tell you one story. I think there are almost 1,000 stories, because when you start working with children who have come in from the slums, and many people in Pune don't realize it, but they've maybe come through, and I say children, I'm talking about youth. Let's say they've come through 17 to 20 years of a very, very poor existence, if I may say so, and a lot of, humiliation, a lot of self-negation. So one of the first things we do nowadays is for 4 weeks, we don't talk skills. We just get them to experience what we call agency. Agency is a social term, which means that are you responsible for your own improvement? And I think the stories that we are finding galore in Pune City Connect is people who come in with no sense of self-worth, but suddenly transform. I'll give you one story. There's a lady called Ashia, who actually comes from Bhawanipet, one of our most COVID-affected areas. But Ashia came and joined us as a student. After a year, she was actually a counselor and mobilizing other students to come to one of our skills lighthouses. We got an opportunity from Aspen University, Washington, DC, to actually send a couple of people for their global conference. And Ashia actually went on a plane for the first time in her life. And today, and when she came back, she was a transformed woman. So I'm saying, who are we to judge the potential of people? And I'm finding that the potential that gets unleashed when they discover their agency, discover their capabilities, is absolutely mind-boggling. And as I said earlier, I'm a great optimist about the future of India. It is unfortunate that we don't have equity in this country. So we have so many divisions in terms of caste and class and community and everything else. But whenever I look at somebody like Ashia, okay, who comes from minority community, comes from the poorest of the poor, I don't even know what her caste is, but today she holds her own head held high in the air, and she is walking shoulder to shoulder with the best. And I can go on, but I'm saying irrespective of caste, class, gender, people have the ability to do it. And I think it's our responsibility as thinking students of the country, of the world, to make that happen. And I think that's one story that I thought I should share. So you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, for that beautiful story that helps us to understand what Pune Connect is doing to individuals to raise their self-worth and make them feel that they are part of the ecosystem to transform India as well. And I think it's been a great evening. We have just 3 minutes more to conclude the session. Is there anybody who wants to share something more or comment about what each other has spoken? Is there anything that you want to share? We have just 3 minutes more. There are no questions asked to any of the panelists, so you can ask the questions if you want.
No, I would just like to say that all of us are doing great work, I think, in our own contexts, but it is the summation of all the good that we are trying to do that will completely transform this country. So if there are anybody who is in the audience who's fence-sitting and saying, should I now go back and get a job in the corporate sector or plunge into the social sector, I would strongly encourage you to look at the social sector.
Thank you for that advice. Shruti, what is your, Shalini, sorry, Shalini. What is
Yeah,
your
so
take?
I think a lot of NGOs, I was on.
We can't hear you.
I think it is time for social entrepreneurs to come up. The time for not-for-profits has almost gone. We need more social entrepreneurs who have their skin in the game, and investors are looking at impact funders are looking at people who make money. So that's something which is here to stay. Also, I feel a lot of, I want to thank platforms like these because skill sharing and as you know, ultimately we are all storytellers, but we need to learn from each other. That is something which is really missing in this segment. So I feel that we need to share our stories more. We need to learn from each other. And I think that is going to add the value and the quality to the quantity that Ganesh ji just spoke about. Thank you.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Dr. Samraj.
Yes, Ashish, what is your last word?
I would echo what Shweta and Dr. Ganesh have just said in terms of there's a lot of like well-intentioned activities or work that different entities and different types of forces or agents of change are doing in the sector. It just I think these kind of platforms provides that both momentum and opportunity to sort of bring it all together, as well as find ways to kind of work together. I like to I have a friend who talks about this as organized serendipity, so how to kind of create moments of connections and change which can drive things, so and not work in silos.
Thank you very much, panelists. All of you have, there's a question that has just popped in here. The question is to Shalini, how can you ensure that the rural people didn't go back to old habits? What measures were taken to ensure that the transformation is permanent? Would you like to answer that question,
Yes,
Shalini?
of course. That's the only question we've got. So, yes, and a very important question. See, change can only be permanent if it is behavioral change, if it is mindset change. So that's why we spoke about making sure that mindset change happens. Ultimately, when you tend to become used to sanitation, when you become used to understanding why this change was important, that you stick to change. So yes, we've taken certain steps to ensure that the transformation remains permanent. But I think the larger challenge is when we withdraw from that village, does the transformation still stay? So yes, the answer is we are just about trying that, where we remove the change agent and the transformation stays, because if not the entire village, a village usually has about 2000 to 2500 odd people. We pick out a group of 10 odd people and make a core group who are responsible, who are not politically driven, but are driven for societal change and societal benefits. And these are the people who drive the transformation that we set the record straight with. So just to answer your question, yes, I think it is possible. And in any case, nothing is impossible in this world. Possible itself says that, yes, I am possible. So
Thank you so much for that very challenging thought and for taking us forward to the future, looking at the future with hope and optimism. I believe that it has been a wonderful afternoon listening to all of you speak, the distinguished speakers, Dr. Ganeshan, a pioneer in that Pune City Connect, and I really like the idea of your story that you showed about that young girl. What a transformation, and what's the case in point? That if each individual was like that girl is transformed in India, what an India it would be. And I think that's a great story. And thank you for your dedicated service to Pune Connect and to the slum children in that locality. Shruti ma'am, thank you for that interesting thought of convergence as the key to social change and transformation. I think that was an excellent thought that you brought, and a need for mindset change. And of course, to Ashish for giving your focus on the Shell Foundation on so many areas, and particularly on renewable energy. That was really enlightening and worth listening to. And I think it has been a wonderful afternoon listening to all this wonderful experiences that you had in your own area of expertise. So, with that thought, I would like to say that let us collaborate and co create and impact India. As Dr. Ganesan just said, that the $1 trillion digital uh, is our dividend for us to use it for our advantage. And as a person who is now in the decision making process, Dr. Ganesan, you must lead us to greater platforms and bring people together and make this happen. And I think your leadership and your vision is greatly admired by all of us. And even Shalini, who has been working in rural India, has made such an impact. And a person who is staying in the West, Ashish, impacting India. That's a great story of the diaspora. And your presence here in the virtual reality has encouraged all of us. And thank you once again. And thank you, the host, Shruti, for bringing us all together in this one platform. Have a wonderful afternoon and goodbye.
Thank you, Dr. Samraj. Thank you, Shruti and the team.